as the radio station catchy catchphrase dwindles to a stop, you hear a voice who has not been heard on this station before say, "Hello everyone, my name is Lutin Remi, and I have been invited to have a special interview over this radio station with the one, the only, the amazing engineer, the man who died 1,000 times, the one who is known for winning the Dodo Awards." How many times was it again?
Oh, a mere 40 times. And you don't have to flatter me, but you can keep going if you really feel like it.
Well, I'm quite excited to be interviewing you now that you've sort of made it past that haze that fell over you. This is the engineer, and as I'm being reminded by the studio, you are more than welcome to ask your own questions. Remember, there are probably going to be a whole lot of questions, so if we don't get to your question, I'm sorry, that's just how it's going to be. But first, I'm going to ask mine. So, engineer, you are the man who died 1,000 deaths, but there are probably some people in our audience who don't know how exactly you got that name. Will you please enlighten us?
Oh gosh, we're going right back there, aren't we? Well, that name I got way before I was ever known as the engineer, which is another story, but I might not tell you that one. When I was starting out in my career and trying to get into movies, I worked as a stuntman. It was a little bit hard for someone with a face with, minimal features like myself to get main acting roles. So I got what I could, and it was a very good education, I'll admit that. But yes, I knew that I was pretty hardy. I'd always been getting up to hijinks, climbing on to things and jumping off of them, much to my mother's displeasure. So I signed up for a bunch of stuntman roles, and I took to it. I had a great time, and I could do things that most other people perhaps wouldn't be unsensible enough to do. So I got a bit of a reputation even amongst people who were not in the movies for being this extra who was always being blown to peck. So people didn't know who I was because it was very early days. I didn't even get credit in most of my first appearances. But they started to call me the man who died 1,000 times, and that's how the legend began.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question based on those times. What was your favorite role before you became a director? Were there any particular roles that just you enjoyed immensely?
That's a hard question. I mean, well, don't get me wrong, I loved all the comedy two-reel shots I did. I loved to make people laugh. But I think getting my first protagonist role, that one meant a lot to me, because as I've said, folks didn't believe that I could emote adequately enough. But after I'd established a bit of a reputation, one of the directors took a chance and gave me the lead role in Safety Least. Originally Harold Floyd, probably before your time. Anyway, he was meant to be the lead, but he injured his hand in a promotional stunt, held onto a bomb for too long. Can you even believe? Anyway, it went grand, and it's still a broad picture. Plenty of gags, hair-raising stunts, and the image of me hanging off of the minute hand of the clock suspended way above Toontown Square. Put my name in lights. And it was the first time I had close-ups. That was terrifying. I tell you, I nearly shook my boots clean off. Being blown up and flinging yourself off a moving train is nothing compared to having a camera dead in front of your face.
I can relate. I admit I tend to hide behind my typewriter because I am a little intimidated by that big round circle that's looking me dead in the eye. Not that I avoid video reports at all. It's just I feel that I'm better used behind the typewriter, and you hear a roof behind him. He's like, "Shut up, Winter." It's fine.
Don't be so rude. He was asking the question himself. You go ahead. What did he say?
And
well, I don't think I can repeat that on the air, can I?
And Lutin says, no, actually, you can't. Please don't swear in the studio. We talked about this. And then you hear
It's got a right attitude, your dog. I'm gonna have to see if I can come up with a picture place for him. Would you like to do some stunts, wee laddie?
and Lutin says, all right. Getting back on the subject, Winter, you can come up here. And then you hear Leap, and I think the engineer grunts, because instead of getting onto Lutin's lap, as Lutin was expecting, he's hopped onto the engineer.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh, you are just a bee's knees, aren't you? Oh, look at you. Oh, you like it in the air. Oh, so do I. Aye, it's a good spot, that, huh? Anyway, we're getting off track. What was your next question? If you do, stop liking me. Oh.
Sorry, if you need him to get off, I can get him off. He just...
Oh, don't you dare. I love him.
All right. My next question was just after, shortly in a moment, we will get to audience questions. But I was just wondering, after you became a director, how did the great rivalry of Dodo Studios begin?
Well, well, it's a... it's a very simple story in a lot of ways. Dodo Studios was a new studio, and I was a new director, and it needed directors, and I needed a studio that would take me on fairly cheap, so I got in there as quick as I could, but apparently not quick enough, or at least my pockets weren't lined thickly enough to ensure that I was the only owner. I got to the doors, like, busting with enthusiasm, about to start. You can imagine, it's my first day, and there's this blue haggis standing in front of the door, and I'm just like, who the heck is that? Why does he have a key? And well, it was a shared ownership of the studio, which I was not aware of until that moment. So we hit things off pretty badly, and I mean hit. May have been me that threw the first punch. I may have to apologise for that. Never. Anyway, if you have a face like that, someone's going to put a fist in it. I just, anyway. So, yeah, we've had a rivalry since we ever met, which is, I have to say, like, as much as I resent him in quite a lot of ways, and as much as I'm not a fan of his movies, having someone to go up against probably gave me a kick up the pants that I needed to, like, really test myself. Like, I think I probably made more of an effort than I ever would have to make good movies. Not that I wouldn't have, but I suppose I can credit DJ Moves with having given me a boost in attempting to, do the best that I possibly could from the very start.
Well, that's very kind of you. I could say the same about other reporters who have gotten on my tail, as it were, but we are being absolutely flooded with questions, so I will put any others that I have on hold and go ahead and start asking questions. An anonymous caller asks, NG, who's your favorite grandchild?
Who's asking that? And who's using my nickname? No one's allowed to use that apart from one person. Anyway, impossible question. You never asked that of a grandfather. I mean, I'd get in so much trouble if I answered, even if I could. No. I'm not stringing that news up for myself. I've died enough times without making myself into a mess. No.
So, I might as well get another question in a similar vein out of the way. Somebody asks, how many people are you going to adopt? You've adopted people?
Officially, I've only adopted 2, and I love them to pieces. And if they're listening at school, that's very nice. Thank you for the teacher letting them. Or perhaps they've rigged up a radio inside their desk. I know quite what they're capable of. So if you've done that, get back to class. You got maths. I know your timetable. Anyway, I call them my extended family. You have people in your life who you love so much that they basically are your family. It doesn't have to have a piece of paper to prove it. I think some of them would be a bit shy of admitting it, but I like to think that a lot of them feel the same way. Or perhaps I'm just being a bit over-optimistic like that. But my Christmas shopping list is quite extensive now, I tell you.
Well, it's a good thing your movies are so successful then. Let me see. We've got another question. What's your favorite stunt you ever done?
Oh no, that's as bad as the grandkid question. Every stunt is new, there's always something great. I think some of my favourite stunts have been the ones that weren't planned, that like something fell apart and I had to make it or die. That was I know that doesn't sound very good for the health and safety inspectors, but honestly, it gives you the best, most genuine reaction, and your body does things that you don't know that it can sometimes. I think there was a movie I made called Cliffhanger. That's a very self-referential movie for this reason. If you haven't watched it, it's about a stuntman who develops a fear of heights after a stunt goes wrong, and the film follows him having to overcome that, and in the end he actually has to do real life stunts with no safety nets because his producer's been kidnapped, and it's completely ridiculous, but I love it and I had a great time doing it. Soundtrack is amazing. I think that one, because I really did. I had to jump over cliff bases, and there was no net. If I missed, that was it. I don't have featherfall. We did have one person on the crew, but he was new, and I was not absolutely sure that was going to keep my skin on. So yeah, that was pretty fun, I have to admit. But anything involving a train, honestly, like climbing about on my train is one of my favourite hobbies. I only don't call those stunts though, because that's just like hanging out on Willow is that's a pastime. That's practically relaxing for me.
Stars, I'm glad that I'm not currently cast in any of your movies, because that sounds 7 degrees too exciting for me. Lutin sounds just a little bit unnerved by what Engineer has described, just because, like, before it was, like, on a movie screen and it was different, but now that he's hearing the Engineer, he's like, oh, wait, that was real, and he's like, woo! And he's like... All right. Oh, we have a personalized message over here. I apologize for yelling, but it is in all caps.
Oh boy.
Angie, what's the worst job you ever had to work before you got into movies? Road from her work break. Terribly sorry about that again.
I know you did credit to the volume. I'm actually, I'm having a bit of trouble because you said it so loudly that I couldn't actually hear the question. Could you repeat it in lower caps, please?
Yes, I absolutely can. Sorry. Angie, what is the worst job you've ever had to work before you got into movies?
Horse dung detail, and that's all you're getting. Anyway, next question.
Oh, somebody sent in a question.
Well, you have horses on set. Someone's got to look after them. Anyway, at least I could have a conversation with them.
Fair enough. I've actually been sent a question. Lutin, what's your favorite of the Engineer's movies? This is...
You can imagine the Engineer, leaning forward like he's really interested in the answer to this one.
This is going to sound completely ridiculous, but I think it's the newest one, and no, it's not because it's the one that was just released. It had this element of heart that I've seen in movies before, but it was needed, if that makes any sense.
I'm hugely grateful that you inferred that, because that is exactly why I made it. I'm very moved. Thank you.
Let's see. I think we're in a break at questions. Let me continue to check. We have been asked, what's your most controversial pizzas topping opinions?
Well, you see, I think my taste is perfectly acceptable, but I've been told by some people that they consider it to be eccentric. I don't know what's the matter with them. But bell peppers, any amount of those, oh, aye, they're great. But honestly, I just love spicy food. So you top that with Tabasco and anything else that you got going, like raw coffee grounds. If you're feeling really lax with your energy levels, just get that caffeine straight on there. Honestly, if it's 3 a.m. and you've got to make a deadline, you'll eat anything. But I think some of my crew somehow have developed asbestos in their tongues because of my particular tastes, and they have to put up with that. So I apologise to those owls for that treatment.
All right, we have another question. Is the engineer going to adopt Next question.
Sorry. That's me, that's not the engineer. He's completely clueless. He's like doing the what? What?
Oh, we have here we have another question. Engineer, is there a great inspiration when it comes to making movies?
Do you mean an individual or just like on the whole? That's a very difficult question. I mean, there's plenty of greats that I could cite, like Charlie Chaffinch and Buster Keaton. God, that was a cat that could land on all fours. In terms of like making movies, I suspect I'm quite like you, because I was surprised by you, Lutin, when you wrote that article you did, because you could have strung me up with the rest of them, but you didn't. You actually went out there and tried to find the truth, which, you know, from 40 years of having to deal with the paparazzi, I will say that you're a fairly unique specimen in that regard, and I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, well, the truth was out there, engineer. It was simply tracking it down, and sometimes it feels like it's not worth the effort because it's what everybody is saying, but I just can't conscience reporting on something that I'm not sure is true.
I agree. But in terms of an internal motivation, I would say that, you know, when I make movies, it's trying to find that core truth of the story and conveying that to people. Like you got the meaning of my latest movie, which is great because I was really hoping that would connect with people. But you know, a story is something you have to listen to. It's finding that story and trusting it. That's, you know, to find the most real in character version of it, whether or not it's the version that I originally envisioned in my head on the script. Seeking out that truth is my job. But it's more than that. It's what I live for. Like taking the clues the story gives me, so as I can orchestrate all those intricate wee threads from every multitudinous individual on the set, like weaving it together. It's like creating a song. The story is why I make the story. I suppose that sounds a little bit loosey goosey and hippified, but honestly, I just try to abide to that truth and do it justice for each and every picture.
All right, next question. If you hypothetically couldn't do trains, would you jump to ships or jump to airplanes?
I know both. I've been considering both. I mean, airplanes are very new and uncool. I'm a little wary of sending myself up there in one of those, and that might sound nonsense from the man who died 1,000 times, but it's quite a long way down, and I've had a couple of not so great experiences with the gravity lately. So I think, honestly, if I was going to do one before the other, I would go towards boats. I do have some good friends, especially in the Duckburgian plots. I could probably actually make that happen. Now you got me thinking. What have you got me thinking? I've got too many movies in my head already. Where's my piece of paper? He's like starting to write down ideas already.
I want to be clear, there is a shifting sound as Lutin absolutely shifts over his own writing pad just so that NG has something to write on. And he's like flipped it so he can't see any questions that Lutin scrambled down, so there's just a quiet shifting noise, and then you hear furious pencil scratching from the engineer, I'm sure.
You carry on, find another question. I've just got to get this down before I forget it.
All right.
Unless you've got one of your own for me.
Well, I've been sort of interested. What movie was your least favorite to make? Were there any that just, like, the outside constraints or even the movie itself just didn't mesh?
I'm not sure if that is a least favourite. There's some that I've done less well than others, which I've been a bit annoyed by because I've thought they were good. But I think all my movies are good. I'm slightly biased. But, I mean, Temple of Gloom, that one gets a lot of attention, and honestly, I don't think it's one of my strongest. There's a lot of research in that is a bit out of date now, and there's a couple of the stunts with the giant boulder, and it's like, it's too predictable. Like, if I had the opportunity to make that one over, I would probably do it. I would do it better because I'm older, I've got more experience. But the problem is, once you start thinking about movies like that, then you're just gonna want to go back and make everything you ever made again, and that's no good. You just got to keep moving forward. All right, yeah, hard answer. I think Temple of Gloom is overrated, and that's me, like, dunking on my own movie. There, you see what you made me do? Oh, my heart is breaking.
Terribly sorry. Let me ask you a follow-up question then to patch up your heart before we get back to the audience. What's your favorite movie that you didn't make? I know, it's another hard one, but hopefully this will remind you there's good in the world.
He's actually sitting and thinking really hard. And then he says, well, this is a damn cheek because I was a cameo in it, but I really like Reservoir Birds. I've got to admit it, Penguin Tarantino is a great director. That movie is stonking fun. I mean, a lot of people don't like how violent it was, but it was the character interactions that really sold it for me on that script. I wasn't sure if I was going to take it on, but I loved it. It was great fun. I really enjoyed that movie. Yeah, I would say that's probably my favourite outside of my own work, which is terribly egoistic, but if I didn't love my own movies, then what would be the point of making them?
Alright, getting back to audience questions. Engineer, what movie scared you most to make? Which was the one you were most worried about how the audience would receive it?
Well, I know the answer to that one, but it's a very odd... The making of this film was very personal to me, so it's quite difficult, because you say audience, and you probably mean Anquel, the people who would pay to go and see this movie, but I made this movie for a very particular person. Those who know me very intimately will know who. Actually, as he's talking, he's kind of gone a bit grey. With like flecks of very bright orange. It's a very odd colour. It's like he's feeling very sad but also passionate at the same time. Well, a lot of people say it's my magnum opus or whatever that phrase is. Does anybody even speak the language that is? I don't even know what that is. Anyway, it's called Pyre, and it's you've probably heard of it. It's fairly well received, and I was glad that it was. But it was very stressful making that movie for a lot of reasons, but mostly just because it meant so much to me, and I had to get it right. It was so important. I had to make it the best I could, and I wrote an entire script. Came up with this great idea. We filmed the first scene, like with the biggest stunt, and I broke my arm. I had to jump from a horse, going up full gallop, jump on the train to take it back from a corrupt militia that had taken it. And I missed. I don't know. I almost never miss, but I think I just misjudged it. I got run over, broken arm. What'd you do? Rewrite the whole script around the stunt. Keep it in the movie. If you've seen that film, sorry, Lutin, you flinched before when I was telling you some of those stunts were real. That one was very real. I was in cast for a long time, and indeed, like in the movie, you see the character has to learn how to shoot left-handed. I had to learn to type and right left-handed. That was a nightmare. And I had like a time limit. I was running out of money. I had to make it before the awards ceremony. We finished like a week before it was. The first viewing was the movie premiere night. I was terrified. If it went badly, it would have been. I mean, I wouldn't have cared about it doing badly, honestly, if it hadn't meant that I would have gone completely bankrupt. But I needed the film to be good. That was what I needed. But because I followed what the story was telling me to do, including the breaking my arm, I think it was actually one of the best things, weirdly, that could have happened for that script. It made it so much better. Anyway, Pyre, that's the one that means the most to me and hurts to make, quite literally.
Well, I remember watching that one over and over when I was younger, so trust me, it's definitely still got its retaining value, even if it hurt you in the process. All right.
It was cathartic. It was very important, and I'm very touched that you actually genuinely liked it, because I can tell when people are just saying, "Oh, I love that film that you made," and they've never seen it. I can tell you just but you mean it, which is, I mean, it's a lot to me.
I try to ever since I was young, I've always tried to understand everybody's opinion, even if I you know, real kind, too kind, obviously there's a difference here. I've always tried not to just... I've always tried to accept it first and then understand it so I can better accept it? I'm sorry, now I'm the one rambling. Back to audience questions.
Oh, you're interesting. You're very interesting to me. I would actually like to sit and ask you a couple of questions, but that's not what you invited me here for, so I'll have to take that one on the chin.
You'll just have to write them down on your notepad and get them to me later, I suppose.
You and me are going to go out and have coffee. That is going to happen.
Well, that sounds delightful. We've got some questions before we go, though, so let's get back to those. We have the question, black and white or color? And I'm assuming that means in movies.
Oh, neither, and both. They're both fantastic mediums to work with, and they both have weaknesses and strengths. I think because I came from black and white, that gave me oddly kind of an advantage, because when colour came in, everyone was so excited, you know, you've got a whole palette to work with. But if you don't have good contrast with key values of light and dark, then it just becomes a technical mess. And I have seen plenty of those. DJ moves looking at you. Anyway, well, the thing is, yeah, the right choice for the right film. That's the answer to that. You can make a great film, and if it's in the wrong spectrum, then it doesn't sit well. I've seen some modern movies that I think would have worked better in black and white, I'll be honest about it. I've got some new talent, and I'm very excited about the possibilities of one of these lads in particular. But I think, you know, equally, he's a very colourful personality. I'll just give you that as a nod and a wink. But I think he could work in black and white just as well.
Actually, I do have a question about that. Let me actually preface it slightly. This might be a sensitive question. If you don't feel comfortable answering it, just say next question. There's no concerns about that.
Oh, I'm nervous now.
Terribly sorry. I'll get through the question quick and we could move on to the next question. But when you were filming the Taffy Train, the people who won the tickets were sorted at random, but after that, for the movie that was actually made, Lost and Found, you used the exact same people, and subsequently, of course, you've adopted 2 of them. I was just wondering how that happened. If they were entirely random, how did you look for them? Did they look for you? Again, you can just say next question.
No, I feel obliged. I feel obliged just to say thank you to them, because the answer is they found me. I don't know if they were particularly looking for me, but they certainly did find me, and it's no joke. I think they saved me. I was about to skip town. I was Yeah, I mean, you were here. You saw it in real time. I was at the bottom of the barrel. I was avoiding people like, oh, it's pretty wearing to try and keep avoiding people when you look like I do. It's pretty tricky. I have one or two tricks up my sleeve to do that, but I was not in a good place, and I was just saying goodbye to Toontown, and they came and knocked me off my feet and knocked some sense into me and gave me a reason to keep trying and a new way of thinking. I got too stuck in my old ways and I really needed someone to shake me up and say, come on, you can do it, and people need you to do it. So I did, and I owe them everything. I really do.
All right. I think we're going to have to wrap up considering it's almost at the hour, but we've got one more. That's weird. It's not exactly a question. It says NG, and yes, I'm using that name intentionally. About the run-in, I'm sorry. And there's no question mark. And there's a pause.
There's a very big pause. You were valid in what you did, except you weren't. You shouldn't drag other people into it, but you could have taken it out of me by myself. I wouldn't have minded. This is going to sound very strange for everybody listening, and apart from this individual, water under the bridge.
All right. I think that's going to do it for us. Well, to be fair, let me ask one more question. Engineer, are there any questions that you wish I had asked that I didn't, that I wasn't smart enough to think of? And Lutin's trying to sort of like smooth out the end of this broadcast for everybody else, because it seemed like after that long pause that was probably something personal. He wants to make sure that like engineers got a moment to recover before they have to end the broadcast.
Well, actually, now that you say it, it's coming up to another anniversary of another unfortunate event, so I feel like I honour the lad. You may have seen he was only in two of my films, The Majestic 11 and The Good, the Bad and the Lucky, but there was a goose who was an excellent actor. He was a bit of a pain in the backside to work with, I will admit that openly, but bless his soul, I miss him. Anyway, since he passed, I feel like I should do a shout out for the films that he was in, because he did a cracking job. I was not expecting him to. He first appeared in The Majestic 11. It's a comedy heist movie that turns into a partial tragedy when the 11 members of a gang, summoned by a man called O'Shawn, have a change of heart, and instead of stealing the contents of a gold mine, they protect the nearby village, which has been repeatedly forced to mine the gold by a ruthless landlord. It's a killer, I love it, and there's a real sort of shift in, goes from a comedy to something really serious halfway through. I enjoyed that. I don't know if many people other than me did. They got a bit of a shock halfway through, as there's quite a lot of deaths. But Delta Song Danger, he was a great actor and gave me one of the best death scenes I've ever seen. Unfortunately, he actually did die last year, and that's a terrible shame. So my condolences to his family. I wish there was more that I could do. But I watch those two films. He does a cracking job in them.
Well, my condolences as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Engineer, before we go?
Oh, nothing. This was a pleasure. You wee little dog is welcome here any time, aren't you? You're such a clever wee doggy. Well, the same to you. Anyway, we'll get that coffee one day, and I'd be happy to give you more interviews. I owe you a great deal for the support you gave me in a time when nobody else was giving it to me, Lutin.
Oh, trust me. Truth has a way of coming out. I just seek it out like my wonderful little terrier here. Well, with that concluded. This is Lutin Remi. I work for the Shooting Star, and I've just completed a wonderful interview with the engineer, the man who died 1,000 deaths. Thank you very much for the station for giving us the airtime. And I suppose this is both of us signing out. Bye!
Cheerio!